Things Weigh-In is brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Hello and a very warm welcome to your Monday night fix of all things weigh-in, and we had pretty broad racing over the weekend. Of course, Awapuni and also Kumara on Saturday, and then we had a bumper meeting on Sunday from Ellerslie. As always, Michael, we've got a jam-packed show, so much to dissect, and looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, hi Em, big hi to everybody around the country, particularly our friends and family down on the west coast. It was wonderful to go home to Kumara and experience a different type of racing on the weekend. We'll touch on where all the horses from the winning races over the weekend are heading, but also tonight, Em, we're going to count down to the sales. Only 2 weeks till things get really serious at the Karaka Sales Ground, the most important week of the year. And Luke Kemeys, the boss and Pied Piper of the Boys Get Paid, is going to join us to talk about not only their involvement in the sales, but of course what they do Karaka Million Night, which is such a special part of our racing culture. Before we get into the horses, a little bit of a shame, hubby won't be there. Opie obviously didn't get off his suspension at this stage, so probably going to miss the night.
Yeah, it looks that way. Certainly gutting, obviously, from all angles, really, for us. But that's the roll of the dice. That's the rules. So, yeah, I guess that's just how the chips will fall this year. It gives someone else an opportunity, and Te Akau certainly have a very strong hand.
Yeah, they do, and lots of movement around the futures markets, not only about this week and the couple of weeks coming up. So lots of updates for you before we get into some conversations around the sales later on.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Let's kick things off with our racing review. We start at Ellerslie with the Te Akau Ginger Nut Silver Stakes.
Cheaper than Divorce, Sue Beats, Mactastic, Emperor Attack and Astrodil. Homeward bound, they head for home, 300 metres to go. Edge of Wonder the leader, leads by 2 for Mongolian Wings, 2.5 away, Swing the Tide. Further back then is Milford, then came Cheaper Than Divorce from Sue Beats and Top Carpy. At the 200, Edge of Wonder, Mongolian Wings, now Milford dropping in on them. Milford ranged up, took the lead. Cheaper Than Divorce is arriving late out wide, but Milford will win the Te Akau Ginger Nut Silver. Second over was Cheaper Than Divorce. Photos for third between either Edge of Wonder and Swing the Tide.
It's been a pretty good form race, the Silver Stakes, when you cast your mind back to even a horse like Scorps last year, who of course went on to place in the Derby, and Mongolian Khan taking out this race in his career too. Milford is a son of Savabeel, a pretty impressive looking son of Savabeel, and I thought, Michael, with what he did when Leith asked him to go, he was pretty green still. He got the head up, he ran around a little bit, and that's a true indication of more ability, and this is a horse on the rise who's only going to improve from that effort.
Yeah, and I think we're also seeing a break-up now between the horses we think are 1,600 metre horses, which may well be Aegon and may well be Brando, who is to Trentham this week, and some of those staying 3-year-old males are starting to come out. So this form could be really significant. It didn't look a particularly strong race on paper, but he's obviously a pretty good horse. I spoke to Stephen Marsh's trainer. He said, look, he's starting to fill the tracks a little bit, as are a lot of horses, because it's quite dry at the moment. So he said, we'll go Avondale Guineas after a week in the paddock. So a week in the paddock, Avondale Guineas into the Derby. So we know Marshy knows how to win a Derby. He did so with Crown Prosecutor a couple of years ago. Another success story for him, the Batangia, of course, Bruce Perry and some of the other owners with a Savabeel. This one, they paid a bit of money for.
Well related though, the dam's a sister to Sacred Falls, so a fantastic family.
Yeah. And he looks obviously like a horse that they're going to get that back with. Here's that Derby market. So still some doubts over Aegon and Brando being there. That's yet to be decided. Rocket Spade is going to head there, as is the Irishman, and Milford comes in just behind them. So the form's been rated pretty highly, Emily, and as you said, he looked very new. You would expect he's going to improve quite a bit on that experience.
Yes, certainly take plenty away from that effort in the Silver Stakes. There was also a handy 2-year-old race on the program that really sort of cemented the Karaka Million picture. Here's a look at race number 3 on the card at Ellerslie, the Norwegian Park 1200.
Song Gone Success and Coyote. Homeward bound, 400 metres to go, and taking over Calicident from on the inside, Dragon Biscuit out on the outside of those on the bubble, strode up stylishly. Baldara's in behind them, wider out Dream Queen. Further back then we've got Coyote at the 200 metres on the bubbles, went bang here, put 2 lengths on them now from Dream Queen and Calicident. Further out then to Coyote, but on the bubbles, gee, that's a nice win, has bolted in the end. Photos for second, not sure between either Dream Queen or the late diving Coyote.
Was a little bit of pre-race drama, Michael, I suppose you could call it, with Millefiori being scratched due to a slightly elevated temperature. She'll now go to Tauranga on Friday, the same race that Kulazabil came through. But it sort of added more complexion to that Karaka Million 2-year-old market, because another Tiaka horse that's come out and pretty much had an exercise gallop in what it's done in that race, and it just adds to that picture. And I think it's getting pretty confusing for punters as to who is the best horse, and they seem so even.
Well, he leapt straight to the top of the market. Once you lose Palamos and you lost a high-hyped horse like Kufu, all of a sudden you start looking for other horses. We've only got 1 or 2 reference points for most of them. Most of them have only had the 1 or 2 starts. When this horse won his debut, I actually thought he was all out, but he went quite hard early. But I think with the 2-year-olds, Emily, and correct me if I'm wrong, but how they improve through this period, whether they get shinny or not, is actually the important part. Well, clearly he's not. He's improving and he's getting better all the time. So he's our favourite for the Karaka Million. Now, I had a long talk to David Ellis today from Tiaka about what's unfolding here, because with Opie suspended, and if he doesn't take that any further, then Danielle becomes Tiaka's #1 rider for Karaka Million night. But he said she's in a situation where after Millefiori races at Tauranga on Friday, she'll choose between it and Sneaky Shark. And I said, so Jonathan Parks retains the ride on this horse? And he said yes. So that's a big get for Jonathan. He's obviously a senior rider and a very good rider. But it's $1 million race, and Tiaka, from what David said to me, unless something changes, haven't trusted him with that ride. And it's hard to... I'm not sure how strong that field was. I don't know. I don't think it was super strong.
The time? What was the time?
But the time wasn't super quick, but then again, when you're sitting out 3 wide, you're only going to go as fast as they let you go. And we saw a 1.8 the other day for the 1200, but a couple of the horses out of that aren't eligible for Karaka Million. So I think it's a really confused picture. I think a lot of people are going to put emphasis on what Jamie says in that last week and a half heading into it. But
who's your pick?
I still like Sneaky Shark. I think he's had no luck so far. But I'll be interested to see what way Danielle chooses to go, or what way the owners and the trainers want her to go after Millefiori races here this week. But well, as I said, we've only got 1 or 2 reference points for most of these horses. Have you got something which has caught your eye more than the others?
Not really. The only concern Sneaky Shark would be the obvious one, I think, but I worry if he's in front, he's left exposed a little bit, although the Karaka Million's been won in front a couple of times, and we've not seen him settle in behind Woody over race, and if that was the case, Woody then blow his chances. I think it's purely going to come down to draws and rides and runs in the race, because they are such an even bunch. And Millefiori is the one that I'm sort of waiting to get that clarification. But any one of these could pop up and do it. And I think it's going to be a gallop on Tuesday morning, who's working the best and who's going to be able to get you through to Saturday.
Well, going back to that previous conversation with Stephen Marsh when he was talking about Milford, it is very warm in the top of the North Island at the moment, and the tracks are getting really firm, and that's where an all-weather track like at Cambridge can help a little bit, but it can be hard on some of these horses, and who doesn't get shinny and who doesn't start to feel just a little bit of a joint may be crucial, and that can change obviously over the next 10 days. So the barrier draw is 11 a.m. on the 20th of January, so often you would think the barrier draw is crucial, but of course probably drew barrier 14.
She's quite exceptional,
exactly
though.
Right.
I feel like she's one out of the box.
Yeah, she won an Epsom, so maybe she's better than many of these. But I think it's good. I think it's a really interesting open year, and there's also a couple of smaller stables who have chances in the race, and I think that's good for the industry.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be an exciting one, because it is even that 2-year-old Karaka Million. There was a Group 1 winner who got back into the winner's enclosure at Ellerslie on Sunday as well. That was, of course, Roger That, who took out race #1.
500 metres to go. It's now and again the leader. Roger That works round on the outside. He's helped the 3 wide, challenging as they turn for home. In between the 2 next is Iskander. Then 2 lengths away to Red Cayenne, followed by Scaglione. Further back, Piping Hot. And at the tail is Awesome Al, down to the 250. Roger That made the lead. Over on the inside is Iskander. Scaglione's battling on. Then came Red Cayenne and Piping Hot. Roger That on the inside of it. Iskander's trying hard. Roger That holding sway from Iskander. Red Cayenne in 3rd spot, but Roger back in winning action here at Ellerslie. Roger That won it. 2nd over was Iskander. 3rd over as they went across the line was Red Cayenne. And then
Well done to Joe Cameron, who was successful in that 2100 metre open handicap, the Premier Horse Transport race number 1. Roger that, obviously a previous Group 1 winner who's no doubt on a path to defend his title in the Auckland Cup, and that was his first win since that Auckland Cup. So he's obviously a horse who's certainly getting back to perhaps some of that form we saw around the Auckland Cup.
Yeah, I spoke to Anthony Fuller, his trainer, tonight, and he was just relieved because he went to Te Rapa, where he's actually failed before, and he was dreadful in the Waikato Cup, and they had no reason, they couldn't find a reason. They're like, we just don't know. So he's obviously come back and had that win. He's considering going to the Avondale Cup into the Auckland Cup. He's got the same problem that we're going to see with another horse later in the show called Bowden, that they're getting so high in the weights.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of horses carry big weights over the weekend and win, but I'm not sure too many people want to back horses carrying 60 kilos or 59 kilos in Auckland and Wellington Cups. So, look, we know he can run the distance. We know he's a quality horse. We know now, looking at that, he's a happy, sound, fit horse. But, gee, it's a lot of weight. And I think most punters, when they look at these races, tend to try and go down the weights. Now, when you look at this market, most importantly, Sauvignon Blanc will not be starting at this race. It is not going to the Auckland Cup, or as we call it there, the Auckland Coup. It's not going, so it's going to be in the paddock. So forget about Sauvignon Blanc, the City of Auckland Cup winner. The rest of those, I reckon, the majority of them may turn up, but we'll talk about Bowden a bit later on.
Yeah, so make sure you count down to the Auckland Cup. Option 3472 if you want to have an investment on that futures market for the Auckland Cup, which obviously closes on the 13th of March. And a few updates to obviously come into that market as we get close to that race day. There's a horse who was a winner on Sunday at Ellerslie, who I feel is a real star on the rise. He's got a name to remember. Of course, I'm talking of Elephant.
Now as they come up towards the home turn, Thunder is back near the tail and going wide, and back with it also Project. Homeward bound they are. 350 metres to go, and the leader is Royal Prince. Thunder coming after them, Thunder right down the outside, but Elephants quickly gather them in here. At the 200, Elephant made the lead. Thunder's out wide from Jip Jip Rock, and behind these Project. Elephant the leader, leads by a length and a half from Thunder. Battling away on the inside is going to be Wild West, but he's going to make it 4 from 4 with his ears pricked and plenty more in store too. Elephant wins again. Second over was Wild West, and followed over by either Thunder or Project. And behind them Jip Jip Rock, followed over then by back and behind.
Michael, this horse to me is just a pleasure to watch. Watching him progress through the grades, it was a beautiful ride by Troy Harris, who just popped him out, and he just keeps improving and improving, and I can't wait to see how far he can go, because I really believe he's a star on the rise. Yeah,
he's got a lovely stride, isn't he? Lovely big long stride, gets right out in front of himself. Where he is going is not the Thorndon Mile. So I spoke to Emily Brown tonight, and no, Thorndon Mile's out. So he was in the market. They left him in there, hoping that, maybe the race might fall away a touch. After the weekend, after yesterday, he's on 78 points. So he got 4 or 5 for that race. Well, they'll be giving away 35 odd points to Melody Bell to go down there and race her. It's an awful lot to give away, and there's plenty of other good horses in the race. So no Thorndon Mile, he heads to the paddock now.
Oh, cool.
He's finished for this stage, and probably for the season. I thought they might look at a race like the Easter, but they said, look, we want to be really patient with this horse. And I could tell in Emily's voice, she's like, we really want to get involved, but we want to be patient. And she was talking maybe, and it's only a maybe, of course, we might look at Australia.
Okay.
So they're talking even potentially as far away as the spring. And by putting him to the paddock now with the 78 rating, they can bring him back and find a nice race for him. They don't need to bring him back and chuck him into a heavy open class race anytime soon, or the Triple Crown. They can do what they want with him to get him ready. Their other horse who's been in good form too, Gone West, he's also heading to the paddock. He won't be going to the Wellington Cup, so he was close enough to the top of the market there, or was in the market. So they could have had a really big day coming up on January the 30th. They've decided to be patient. So the Elephant, I think, might be next season before we see him in, but I do agree, he's pretty exciting, and also there's scope there to work out the way he's bred. he could be a really good 1,400 metre horse or a really good
Interesting.
2,000 metre
Yeah,
horse.
the way he is bred, just at home, if you don't know, he's by Shocking, out of a mare called Ticklish. So Shocking's obviously renowned for his stayers, and Ticklish, Opie said to me she could barely get 1,200 metres. So that marriage of the two of them is interesting what it might leave. He certainly looks like he's going to get a mile plus is going to be no issue for him. But yeah, he's got a little bit of speed, but still sort of stays.
And a really nice bump in the last 6 weeks for Shocking. I mean, he's had a lot of country cups winners and decent cups winners around the country. And yeah, there's Shockings in the sale coming up, and people will be happy enough to go, okay, look, this isn't just about trying to buy a Derby horse or a cup horse, because that's a long time to wait for people. They can go, I might get an elephant. If there's some sprinting blood on the other side of the family, I might get a decent horse who's going to make a nice miler. So he stands at Rich Hill, obviously, and they've had a really good couple of months with what their stallions have done. Praseer's really updated himself. There's a lot of hype around the Badamosses. So I think John and his team there can be really happy with some of the things that are unfolding around them as they head into the sales.
Yeah, they've also got Sotono Aladdin as a first season sire as well. He's got representation in Book 1 and also Book 2. Well, we move down the country now and get to Awapuni. It was a feature meeting on Saturday, and this is a look at Bowden absolutely blitzing his rivals in the Martin Cup.
Here, there's 4 lengths further away. Falar now running on. VCC over on the outside. Bowden in front, halfway down. He's about still 4 lengths in front. Sergeant Blast fighting on. Grand Bouquet the inside, then Falar, but he's left them breathless here. And take a bow, Bowden. Bowden, amazing performance. He has been way too good. Grand Bouquet, the good fight, and then we had Sergeant Blast back behind them. Falar.
Well, it was pretty much a carbon copy performance of his Taupo Cup effort, where Ryan Elliott pressed the go button pretty early, turning for home, and just absolutely run his rivals off the feet. Bowden stretching away to a dominant win over the 2,200 metres. And gosh, I was in the studio covering this meeting on Saturday. This is one of the standout performances of the day. He obliterated his field. He just made complete mincemeat of them. Really daring tactics by Ryan Elliott, but both times he's done it, it's paid off, kept the horse out of trouble, let him get rolling, and he's pulled away.
When he won this race last year, I think we all started to realise he was a pretty good horse. And then, of course, he went on to have just before he had no luck in the Zabeel Classic, ran third. And then he had a poor spring, and Graham Rogerson said Joan Egan was crucial in letting me back off the horse. So Joan obviously owns the horse and bred it, that's her colours. The colours were seen also with Concert Hall in the last couple of weeks in that Taupo Cup, as you mentioned. But he said, I said to Joan, I want to back off him because there's something wrong with him, but I don't know what it is. There's nothing serious, but we want to get a virus out of his system. And he said that patience allowed him to back away from the horse after trying to go to Hastings with him, reset him, and clearly it's worked. He wants to go to the Wellington Cup, Roger, because he thinks the horse is a big relaxed horse and he'll cop the 2 miles. I thought he might be too brilliant.
Brilliant, that's
for 2
what
miles,
I felt, yeah.
Because he's a third in a Zabeel Classic type horse. But he's got 60 kgs, so the weights are out for the Wellington Cup. And it's not a super strong Wellington Cup. There's only 5 horses in the race rated above 87, so the rest of them are sort of like on 53 kgs. So he's going to be giving away an awful lot of weight to a lot of horses. So the intention he is going to go, but he's going to have to carry 60 kgs over 2 miles, which again, like the Roger, that situation is not easy to do. And as I said, the top end of it, there's sort of 4 or 5 of them in a clump, and then there's this massive gap to everybody else on those 53. So it's not going to be easy. Graham said through that race, he'll decide if the Auckland Cup also comes into play for a horse like Bowden. But if he keeps winning these races in, they're going to eventually have to go to Weight for Age with him again, because you just can't keep carrying 60 kgs all the time. Even though we've seen a lot of horses in the last 2 weeks win the big weights, and we're about to see another one, it's a lot harder over 2 miles.
Yeah, it sure is. Talking of big weights, Call Sign Mav was successful in race 4 at Awapuni, which was the property broker's 1,400 metres. Here he is in the yellow colours.
Wider, getting up and behind these runners then is What a Smasher here is. Stumpy goes to Marlow Bick and Shadows Cast is coming after these, and on the inside Just Fabulous and wider out Times Ticking, Hartley and Call Sign Mav. They are lining up here. Stumpy, Shadows Cast, Call Sign Mav under the 63 and wider out Times Ticking. Whoa, what a big performance. Call Sign Mav under that huge weight. He's done it. Second time Ticking, Shadows Cast, Stumpy, Hartley behind them, and then just
Jonathan Riddell and John Barry combining with Call Sign Mav. 63 kilos he carried, and I'll be honest with you, Michael, I was watching the race and I'd completely dulled out of him. He was off the bridle and he was going nowhere, and I was looking at those leaders closer to the rail, and here he comes down the outside and wins pretty easily on the line. Actually, he's got the ears just pricked there, and I just thought it was a massive performance. I spoke to Jonathan yesterday actually about the win, and he said it was very unlike the horse. Normally he's a little bit fierce in what he does, but he was niggling him the whole way. And you know, Jonathan, in his mind, he said, I gave him a few behind the saddle and he didn't respond, and I just gave him hands and heels, and then next minute I looked up and we were going to win. So he wondered, you know, he goes faster when I don't hit him, but no, still a fantastic performance.
I think 2 wins there for John Barry, so obviously he'd be thrilled. It's not something many people do very often, win an open handicap with 63 kgs. It's the first time he's won away from Hastings, that horse.
Yeah.
But John has a plan which Jonathan has been part of, John Barry, Jonathan Riddell, and that is to get the horse out to 1600, which he's already done and finished third at Group 1 level, but more importantly 2000, because 2000 gives you so many options around the whole country. And he said the reason we're doing that is we want to have a crack at the Triple Crown next year on our home track. That's where we race best. And part of that was to settle him back in that field. So he warned the punters on Saturday morning, we'll be riding him cold. And as you heard, he settled really well, probably too well.
Yeah.
So that's, while it may have been uncomfortable for punters to watch, it's a big indicator to the fact that if he can do that, maybe they can get 2000 with him. And
looking at what he did, the way he hit the line, I mean, you'd be thinking the mile is ideal, and he'd look like he'd get over further. Yeah,
so that's a double win for them, because they were a little bit concerned he might get a bit fiery. He actually said, look, we considered the Telegraph, but we don't want to go there because we didn't want to spin his wheels that much. So they've got a horse now which you wouldn't be scared to go to the race at Otaki over 1600.
Yep.
I tried to get hold of John today, my apologies, I can't tell people exactly where the horse is going next, but I think they'll be encouraged to think their range is getting broader, and next year he'll be 5 and he should come back potentially even a stronger horse. So exciting for him. But yeah, 63 kilos. I know our weight scale has changed, Emily, but in the North Island, over the time I've been following galloping, which I've only been writing about it for a little bit, but I've followed it for probably 30 years. I think Rough Habit won a race once was 66 and a half or something preposterous. But not many horses have carried 63 kilos. I think Over the River or Scapolo or one of those horses might have also, but not that level of open handicap. It doesn't happen all that often, even though we are changing the weight scales a bit at the moment.
Yeah, I think it really validates what he did in the spring as well when taking out that 1400 metre Group 1. It shows that he is versatile and he can handle a trip away from home as well. One of the other pretty good form races on the programme at Awapuni was that race number 3, the Spreading Rural Bulk 1400 metres, and you've got to follow Lisa Allpress here up the rail.
Miglio de Feltres, Supreme Khan with a really good kick here, a length and a half in front. Maho the outside, Miglio de Feltres now. Bonham is getting right up on the inside, and Passione is wider out. Supreme Khan, Bonham starting to charge. Supreme Khan, Bonham on the inside, really winning. It'll win, beat Supreme Khan, Maho, and then either Passione or on the inside, Signora Nero.
It was the shortest way home for Lisa Allpress and Bonham up the rail. It was a patient ride, and she got the gaps and was able to get up over the top of them. Bonham's always been classy. We saw that in the spring, and even when she did finish in 7th in that 1,000 guineas, it was still a really creditable run when being wide and not having all favours, and I thought it was good to see her resume in such good fashion. Of course, Probable won this race last year and then headed towards the Karaka Million 3-year-old and was successful. So I wonder what they're going to do with Bonham. They've been successful in a Karaka Million previously, so they know how to win one.
I can tell you what they're going to do. I spoke to John Bennett tonight. They're going to Saturday at Trentham. So they're going to the Living Classic. So look, it's a Living Classic which has fallen away quite a bit. And that happens every year because a lot of horses get through the carnivals and they get a little bit tired. you see her there, she's $18. So Brando clearly dominates the market. Spoke to Stephen Marsh tonight, Whimsical is going, so that's a yes. A horse who's pulled out in the last 3 or 4 days, Suffused, who was third in the market, he'll be gelded. The China Horse Club horse, so he'll be coming back hopefully with a different attitude. But Bonham is definitely going to this race. So Jono said we go there, and then they have the option of coming north for the Karaka Classic Mile. But that's a lot. That's a pretty big stretch for a horse to do both. So I'm not sure she'll turn up at both, but she is going to Trentham this Saturday. I did say to him, do you think she'll get a longer trip? Obviously the Oaks being the one. He said, look, we're not worried about that yet. We'll worry about that after we get through these next couple of races.
What do you think about Brando's 1.7? Do you think that's good money?
The way things tick over and the way people bet in this country and the way also that offshore algorithms work, he won't start much longer. Like Tiaka are flying, Jamie obviously is flying. Danielle will be taking the ride, she's 50 clear on the premiership. What I say to people when I talk about odds is this, what else are they going to back in the race? Like the punters out there, first of all, the big punters, the huge punters aren't going to be backing anything else in the race. And then most people who watch this for a bit of fun and Saturday afternoon have a couple of beers and watch the races, they'll just go, yep, love Jamie Richards, love Danielle Johnson, love this horse. So it's really hard to make a case people will back other horses.
Yep.
And he also is a horse who might cop a 10 or a 20,000 on the day, a big bet. So I think there's going to be a little bit of that going on with Tiaka over the next month, where people are going to want to hit Melody Bell and want to hit Avantage this week, and they're going to want to hit horses that Karaka Million. They won't all come off, but I'm always big for saying don't be taking these short odds, but they probably aren't going to get much more generous unless there's rain or something happening, which we probably don't expect.
Yeah, right. Kumara was the other meeting on Saturday, the Kumara Gold Nuggets, obviously the feature on the card. A fantastic day at the races, and Over the River added to the excitement.
The groom still giving the outside Beneficial. Over the River trying to reach them up the centre of the track. Wider Hurricane Over the River. The 10-year-old burst to the lead with 100 metres to go. The fairy tale's on. 100 starts, 24 wins and 2 nuggets. Over the River, You Beauty to beat Hurricane and Beneficial third. Bluey's Chance for it then. The next...
Michael, I think it's fair to say that Over the River is the definition of a war horse, as we heard the commentator saying there. $472,955 in the bank, 100 starts, 24 wins, 27 places. He's just an old marvel, and a special nod to the Kevin Myers team, who just keep this horse happy, healthy, fit to be able to come out and win a Gold Nuggets.
He won that race 2 years ago. He'd only won one race since. And it's funny when you spend a lot of time going to Ellerslie and those places, how different the racing down home, because obviously I'm from that part of the world, is. And they're off the bit such a long way from home. Some of the races, they're off the bit at the 800 because they're always going around a bend.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different style of racing, and it suits some horses. And as you said, he's a warrior, so he's in for a fight. I thought Hurricane was really good. He's actually heading to the Wellington Cup. And it was... I spoke to Raymond Connors about it. I said, well, why did you bother going there? He said, we want to be part of the experience. It's a lot of fun. We want to go down there. And Kevin Myers is an unusual guy, obviously. We never get a chance to talk to him on television, which I think is a real shame, because I think he would have a wonderful knowledge that we could all hopefully try and tap into, but I respect his decision, and that's his decision. But without him and people like Raymond travelling from the CD, that West Coast circuit would struggle to get people's interest and traction. So they deserve a lot of credit for that. I was down there on the weekend, and they put a new running route into Kumara, which probably isn't going to change your life much, but they spent about $170,000 on the track. And I spoke to Adam Berry, who's the vice president of the club there, and I said, well, how did that come about? He said, we had 50,000 people donate locally.
Wow.
So those small communities, if given the chance, I believe, Emily, I do believe we have to close some racetracks around the country. I have no doubts about that. But I also think you should give some of those communities the chance to engage and say, yep, we're happy to pay some of the freight for this, as they do for their local rugby grounds and their cricket grounds and that sort of stuff. Kumara was never in danger of being closed. I'm not saying it was, but people were willing to say, yeah, we're willing to help out here a lot. Really good circuit, and there's a lot of people. I met some guys at the Recreation Hotel, and they said, well, one of the reasons we own horses is to come here. They were just 4 or 5 really good guys having a beer, enjoying life, and they said one of the reasons we want to own racehorses is to come here. And I firmly believe, and no one who sits with a clipboard or any algorithm or any set of stats can prove to me that denying those people their interest and going to those carnivals is going to be good. Now, in Ireland, they have the Galway jumping carnival, and Galway's on the other side of Ireland from where all the racehorses are trained. But you have to spend $1 sometimes to make $1. And I do think that, yes, we need to close some racetracks, but we need to talk to those communities and say, hey, do you actually want this? Because if you don't want it, we're going to close it.
Yeah.
But if you want it, you're going to pay for it and make sure it's safe. And that track the other day, Race Super, I thought the whole circuit, while it's not my sort of racing and while it's not your sort of racing, I still think it's got a place in this country. And it's going to be an awfully bizarre conversation for someone to try and convince me that's not right. When you go there, I would say to anybody who makes those decisions, go there.
What, should I put it on my bucket list?
You shouldn't go to Camara because about seven people said to me at Camara, isn't she so lovely, Emily Boss, and she must be Opie's wife, and I was like, oh God, you'll get absolutely harassed if you go to Camara. I think you're like the Judy Bailey of New Zealand racing, really, like famous in Camara.
I think we should move on at that point. Let's have a little update around the Trainers Premiership and also the Jockeys Premiership. Here's a look at the Trainers Premiership. Jamie Richards clearly in the lead with 89 wins and just shy of $2.5 million in the bank. Stephen Marsh enjoying a great season with 36, Alan Sharrock 32, and then pretty close there, Baker Forsman 30 and the Pitmans on 30 as well, Michael.
I'll make a deal. I can actually get you a free trip to Camara if you promise Opie will go with you. That might be the tricky part.
You need to talk to him about that. He's the boss when it comes to riding.
Just talking about Jamie there at the 2.4 million-ish. I think the record in New Zealand is Andrew Murray, about 4.6, 4.8. The next 4 weeks are going to tell us whether Jamie can get there. He's going to need a big Karaka million. Obviously, Danielle's so far in front. She wasn't the story of racing last weekend. Danielle actually had a weekend off. On the jockeys' ranks, the story was Craig Grills landing his plane at Ruakaka.
That was epic, I thought.
What a wonderful story. And then riding 5 winners too. So, Danielle's on track to ride an enormous array of winners. Just talking about jockeys' ranks, importantly, Chad Ormsby. Now, you helped Chad do some rodeo work recently as part of one of your other programs, and sadly broke his leg in a couple of places the other day, rodeo riding. Yeah,
I know. Really unfortunate when we caught up with him for it's coming up shortly on Beyond the Winning Post, but he actually won his rodeo, and then it's so dangerous, really, you know, and it's obviously all up to the bull, and unfortunately he got injured. So that's another real blow to the riding ranks, and really unfortunate for him.
It's one you don't expect, isn't it? Like you expect people to get suspended.
Injured on a horse or...
Just another important note for us in racing, and this is on a far more serious note. I spoke to the boys and girls at Windsor Park Stud tonight. They are in mourning. One of their staff, Samara Windle, passed away in what I believe was a quad bike accident on a farm down in the Hawke's Bay. I don't know those exact details, but something like that. To all the team at Windsor Park, they were really shattered. They said, lovely, lovely person. She did lots of different jobs for us. We treasured her. They were really sad. It's a busy time coming up for them. So this is a really cruel blow. So to anybody out there watching who was a friend of Samara's, or to obviously the people from Windsor Park Stud, our condolences are with you. And a very sad thing to happen. And we hope you guys can stick together leading into this busy time. Yeah, thoughts and condolences with everyone at Windsor Park and all of Samara's friends and family. We're going to get you off to a break here on Wayne, and on the back of that, we link in with Little Avondale Stud, who have time test as a first season sire and are also celebrating 80 years in the game. Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Buzz and Suze, we're here celebrating 80 years of Little Avondale Stud, and I know a particularly fond memory is getting the first $100,000 yearling. Tell me about that.
Well, it was a absolutely magical moment because it was the sound barrier for those days. The first in Australasia. We got 2 on the same day. Lorraine Jamison from Cardeness, just up the line a bit. But it was a huge moment. I remember we got to 70,000 that stopped, and I thought, come on, for God's sake, you've got to go a little bit more than that. 70's not enough, I want 80. And we went at 80, and then it stopped again. And I'm walking around, and I'm really quite disappointed at 80 grand. And then it went bang, bang. And Tommy Smith ended up at 100, and it was just, the horse was out of control for 3 hours, and I was out of control for 4.
Sam, you're celebrating Little Avondale Stud's 80th year in operation. How proud are you of that history?
Very proud, Emily. Listen, we're the third generation, so I'm just lucky to be the one who's caretaking at the helm at the moment. And the hard work's all been done before us, hasn't it? With my grandparents and Buzz and Sue's, my parents. So listen, yeah, Katrina and I are really enjoying the 80th year, and whilst it's been COVID, we're going to make the most of it and enjoy ourselves at the sales. And yeah, let's hope it's a boomer.
What's the reception been like for the first Southern Hemisphere crop of time test?
It hasn't been surprising, because we really love them here. He's a good-looking horse. He's a fertile horse. We saw his progeny up there in England. We were wrapped with what we saw, but we're even more tickled pink down here with the progeny down here. I love them. Attractive foals, and the comments, the feedback we've been getting from the agents has been enormous. You know, Dean Hawthorne, Bruce Perry, you know, they're two of the best judges in the business, and they've both been very, very complimentary. So yeah, look, I'm excited about cricket, and I'm excited about time test.
Outside of Aloha, what are the other highlights in your draft?
Oh, look, I think we've got an exceptional Puruncanto filly out of the mare On Your Feet. She's by Snitzel. The pedigree is really firing up at the moment with Mighty Feet in Australia and Faithful Feet. Yeah, I'm really excited about her. She's got a page, but she's a very physical filly, and being by Puruncanto, you know, he's flying at the moment. So yeah, she's one of the stars of the draft. I think the thing I'm going to look most forward to at Karaka this year is the Karaka Millions. We've got Avanalo heading there at the stage from Jamie Richards' stable. He's an ex-Karaka graduate. Look, yeah, it sets the sale off, doesn't it? And it is the race meeting to be at now. And then to get to the sales, look, I look forward to Karaka every year. It is the highlight of the year. It's sort of like a second home for us. I love getting up there, and I love selling the horses. I love being in the sale ring.
And best of luck to Little Avondale Stud with Time Test, having his first yearlings through the ring at Karaka 2021, and of course 80 years in operation as well. Well, we promised a special guest at the start of the show, and he now joins us. Luke Kemeys from The Boys Get Paid. Welcome into Weigh In, great to have you with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've never been a special guest before, so this is the first time for me.
I imagine we join you at a pretty busy time with just a couple of weeks to go until obviously the big race day, the Karaka Million.
Yeah, things start to get pretty hectic at this time of year, just with the admin and stuff for the Karaka Million, but it's good to turn the phone off for a little bit and get in here and join you guys and listen to a bit of mixed waffle and see how we go.
Yeah, well, mate, you're lucky my voice is back for this one, so I can ask you all the questions I've got in the back of my head. I've got some really interesting ones for you later on about the punt, but just with the sales, it's obviously a really busy time of year for that sector of the industry. Last year you guys sold a horse, and this year you're intending on buying one. So has that been something the boys get paid? You want to take that to another step? But obviously you've got the gambling side, you've got lots of other broadcasting things going on. But did you want to say to some people, hey, let's get involved in this too?
Yeah, it's something we've looked at for a while, and I think we've been a little bit cautious about it because we just want to educate people along the journey of how racing a horse works, so that they're not just going straight from having a bet to all of a sudden buying a horse and then going, oh, did they take a year to race and those types of things. But seeing, you know, the way that the industry is moving forward, I think it's probably our time to come to the party and actually get a group together and buy a yearling for the first time.
What was the experience like? Because race day is pretty much something that most people know how it goes. You can have a few drinks, you can have a bit of a laugh. The sale's vastly different. Once you get to the ground, people either don't like it or find it incredibly addictive. I think Emily and I are in the second group of those. How did you find the experience of looking at horses, the noise, the action, the money going around? What was sales experiences like for you, for someone who I presume wasn't going to them as a young person?
Yeah, to be fair, I think I started looking at the sales as being intimidating, and then going right through to seeing Sam talking before from Little Avondale brought back some memories, and the excitement was huge. And I think personally it's been one of the most rewarding things that we've done with Boys Get Paid was pinhooking Savage last year, the Savabeel colt, and then watching him progress right through to getting over to Chris Waller's now. So yeah, there was something different about it, and I think there were guys involved in that they were in that with their dad, and some of them were replying to an email saying, "What's a weanling?" And then taking a share, and just cool stories like that. And then they just loved it, and we were so well looked after that it was an experience that was hard to forget.
Who helps you out with the yearling purchase this year, or do you just go it alone?
Yeah, definitely not going to be putting my hand up to try and figure that one out. So I might have had a couple too many beers at Ellerslie the other day and bumped into a cigar smoking David Ellis after winning a Group 1 and asked if they'd be interested in giving us a hand, and we put it out to the community of our supporters members whether they'd be keen to race one, and they are. So we're going to dip the toe in the water and see how we go, and if it works then we'll look to expand on it and do it in years to come.
Emily, it's getting pretty close, and obviously we mentioned before time test that those new season stallions really interesting. Obviously El Manzoor is the biggest dog of those. I think he's got 48 or something. He's the big one. He's the big noise who's going to land at Karaka in a couple of weeks. But we heard their time test, who was a really good horse, a son of Dabawi. That's really interesting to get that blood coming back into the country. But another horse which is almost feels close to home for us here in New Zealand is Ribchester, who we know Ifraj stood at Haunui, and obviously they now have Ribchester, who's going to be available to breeders here, and he has a couple going for the sales this year, and I know you have been a fan.
Yeah, huge fan of Ribchester. I saw one colt out at Haunui Farm, and I thought to myself, if they all look like that, well, certainly we're in for a bit of a treat here in New Zealand. So great to see him as a wonderful addition to our stallion ranks. We've got a little piece with Ribchester. Mark Chitty, we caught up with him to find out about the progeny and also Ribchester himself.
Ribchester as a racehorse was a fantastic, high-class champion European miler 2 years in a row as a 3 and a 4 year old, won 4 Group 1s. Time form rating 129, doesn't get much better. Being a son of Ifraj obviously was a big appeal for us. In terms of his yearlings, he probably hasn't left as big a yearling as Ifraj. He's left good, strong, medium-sized horses, good movers. They've been good foals. COVID prevented us seeing a lot of them, but there are 6 or 7 here in New Zealand, and they were all really good, solid types. Probably a great perspective out of those 6 or 7 foals from a breeding perspective is that 60-65% of those breeders have come back and bred to Ribchester. So that tells you something. 3rd year in the Southern Hemisphere. And we've seen a good, strong style of mare, very, very much mares similar to what came to Ifraj in his later years. So yeah, he's going to have every opportunity. The Ribchester yearlings, 3 in the sale. We've got a colt, there's a filly and another colt in the sale. They're very good, medium-sized, strong, good walking horses, good bone, good feet. And I think they'll appeal to people. I think people appreciate the quality of Ribchester as a racehorse, and they know what Ifraj has done. Any first season sire going into the marketplace is always met with a bit of trepidation. Ribchester was a fantastic racehorse. He's left really good types. People know what the sire line's done in this part of the world, so I think they'll be really readily accepted, and hopefully they go into some very good stables. The yearling sale from Haunui's perspective, I think, will be something quite unique. We've got a very broad spectrum group of yearlings. We haven't got any superstars, but we've got some really nice lots. It's represented by 17 stallions, some families that have been traditional going through the sales ring. Lots of foals, yearlings out of young mares. So there's something for everybody at all levels of the market. What we require to do for this year's sale, I think our videos, our reporting, our transparency just has to be greater than it's ever been before. We're certainly spending a lot more time in our videos. We're utilising 2 veterinary opinions on x-rays and scopes to try and give buyers every opportunity to look at horses, see what they like, and be part of Karaka 2021. Favourites in a draft at 44 is always hard because we represent a lot of clients, but the Annie Higgins colt, lot 244 by Ocean Park's a special colt. The Merchant Navy filly, lot 70, it's from the Haunui Foundation family. 151's an Ifraj filly out of Strictly Time from the Soliloquy family. We've represented the Moore family for many a year, so she's a special filly. Lot 27, the Patrimonium filly by Ifraj, a lovely internationally pedigreed mare. And there's many, many more, so I've only just highlighted 3 or 4, but come to B Block and see for yourself.
Something new, ringing in my ears, coming down the line.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Welcome back with us here on Weigh-In. Luke Kemeys joins us for the last part of the show and keen to get into some of the nitty-gritty around the Boys Get Paid. And I just thought, Luke, before Michael gets into some of the deeper stuff with you, just for people at home who maybe don't know much about the Boys Get Paid but have heard the name, tell us in basic layman's terms what it is and how people can get involved.
Yeah, so it started out as guys that were at just finishing school and getting our tab account at 18, and we were going along to the races at Awapuni there, and we needed a way to be able to talk to each other, and so we had a Facebook group so that you could put a tip into, and we'd back those on the weekend, and whoever tipped the winner of the weekend would have bragging rights, and it's just kind of grown from there, where it was sort of 5 of us through to 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000. As we've grown, we've added some events along the way and just tried to do cooler things to engage people in the sport. And of course the Karaka Million sort of become our big event, and here we are today. I'm wearing makeup on weigh-in and it's all happening.
So what sort of numbers are we looking at for Karaka Million, which is 12 days away?
Yeah, I checked in with Ellerslie today and they've just gone past 700 tickets, so that's the most we've ever had. And I think we did 80 to 100 tickets in the last week last year, so I'd say we're probably going to hopefully sell the room out at 850 come 23rd.
I know it's called Boys Get Paid, but it's not just boys. Obviously, there are female members. How many if there's 800 people there, what percentage would be female?
I think it's looking at about 15%, so it's not exactly a 50-50. But you know, there's a few coming, and they're coming as they're starting to see some of the scenes of what's happening as well, and going, right, I want to be a part of this. I'm not missing out.
What obviously, I learnt this evening you've actually got a real job that takes up some of your time. How much of your time does this take up, Boys Get Paid?
It is a lot. You know, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it was. And partly, a lot of that's actually my fault. You know, people will come to me and say, oh, can you help us with this? And I'll think, yep, I want to help with that. And then I'll sort of go down a rabbit hole of 20 hours of work that doesn't necessarily lead to too much. So this year for me is about actually focusing on my own business and growing that, and just being very careful of the things that I do say yes to if Boys Get Paid, but still trying to maintain that community and keep it going smoothly.
It must be very satisfying, like those scenes there, which have now become iconic scenes, and it's not an easy thing to do to become iconic in the size of an industry like New Zealand racing. But when that chanting is going on and knowing people like Brendan Lindsay love it, and Opie obviously loves it, and to have that going on must be incredibly satisfying to know that, bizarrely, without you, this wouldn't be happening.
Yeah,
because someone's got to start these things.
Yeah, I suppose it's right, and I mean, I probably don't think about it like that because I'm so deep in it, but I mean, it definitely is special, and it's pretty rewarding when you get to then meet those types of people who, you've kind of looked up to and kept an eye on over the years when we were just basically tragic punters to now actually being a big part of this day. It's pretty special, and I can remember walking into Ellerslie for the first time to sit down. I didn't even get a meeting with the CEO at that stage. It was like, nah, who's that guy? We're not meeting with him. And so now, I talk to Paul just about every week from Ellerslie, and it is cool what we've been able to grow.
So with, for example, what's coming up for Ellerslie this time, because you had a couple of massive punters clubs and a lot due to Opie, because he's been so good to you guys on the punt. You've had a couple of big wins, and then a couple of times last year you got a bleeding nose at a couple of carnivals, which happens to all of us, Luke, trust me, on the punt. How much money might be, or do you have an expectation there could be, in the pool for your Karaka Million evening attack?
Yeah, well, last year we had 252,000, and this year, for some reason, I feel like it's going to be smaller. I think we might only end up with a couple of $100,000 and be doing well at 200,000. We've only got about 30 at the moment, which is slow compared to other years, and I can't work out whether people now rely on the systems we have and they're going to get in late, and it's just going to go mental over the next 2 weeks, or people are going, actually, I'll just sit back and watch and just watch from the pub and have a couple of beers or from home. So not entirely sure where we're going to land, but I'm guessing 200,000.
Okay, so somebody says here's $200,000. Who makes the decisions on what you back? And this is a subject close to my heart. How do you get that money on? How does somebody, I think you had 10,000 each way once on True Enough to win the Copeland's Mile. How do you get that money on? Because obviously most punters wouldn't be allowed to have a bet that big.
Yeah, well, obviously it's very out in the open that this is a syndicate of people. We've had communication with the TAB around, you know, what we're doing and what the pool sizes are and things like that. So it's very open. And the True Enough, for instance, we were, I think, down 50 grand at that stage, and it was our last of our 70 grand. So it was basically recovering the 50 that we'd already given them. In terms of the Karaka Million, there is a bit of comms with the TAB of, right, here's some limits and things that we have to play within. And they've actually come on board and provided a bonus bet for people that are entering, because they see it as a great way to drive further turnover and whatnot as well. So we don't have trouble getting it on.
Who makes the final say? Who says we're having 100,000 on Avante? Who says that?
Yeah, that basically sits with me at the end of the day. So I've got
Does that make you nervous?
Yeah, huge responsibility.
Well, I actually put 50,000 on probably when I was on the step machine at the gym last year. So I was very...
I
actually saw you that night and I said, back it now because the 210 will become $1.80.
Yeah.
Remember that conversation we had about... Because getting the right odds when you're having 50k on, 30 cents doesn't sound a lot of money, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah, and you know, we went to back it again, and then it started to cave in the market, and then we're looking at $1.45, and it was sort of, do we put another 45 grand on to, you know, for what we're getting back at 45%? So, and we did in the end, which was the right call, but it does get quite nervy, and we've got Mr. Lacey there, of course, and then Ted, who's been great for Boys Get Paid along the way. And it's great to bump into people like yourself at Rincon on a Friday night before the Karaka Milli, when I'm trying to get some food in and figure out if you like some of the things that I do too.
You guys have tried to expand into radio to fill a void, which is there, and Louis Herman, what has radio experience, and with Mark Claydon, I think they've done a really good job. Where does this, what's next? What do you want to expand into? How can you see yourself helping New Zealand racing, or what's on the wish list for the Boys Get Paid?
So this year is massively about looking after our supporters members, and they're basically people that have kicked in a bit of cash that have allowed us to do some of the things that we've done, including the media and extra media, and build the app and things like that. So we want to really look after them, because I can identify that those are the people that are actually actively really into the sport, versus some of the guys that might just be in the overall group that'll copy someone's multi or put a bet on and whatnot, and then come back 6 months later. So, you know, the focus is definitely going to be, if the borders open back up, one international event, and then a bigger and bolder Karaka Million. I don't know where we can go if we have more than 850 people. We might need to either decrease the amount of people and increase the ticket price, who knows. But more of the same, but a very lean down approach.
You're a very analytical person. It's part of your job, and therefore you're not going to stand by and idly watch New Zealand racing without having an opinion. If you could change or implement something into New Zealand racing, what would it be?
If I could have, I would have banned gambling into overseas countries a number of years ago.
Okay, so
that was
the IAG. Yep.
Yeah, that was the solution a long time ago. We've probably gone too far. And so when I see a campaign around trying to encourage people to bet here, you know, we've still got debt on the balance sheet that we need to pay down and things like that. So I don't see that as being the real solution to some of the problems that we face ourselves in. So that's obviously easy to do in hindsight. I think we just need to collaborate, and some of these clubs need to, you know, get out of the way, basically, of the way that the consumer is acting. And you look at the likes of Lotto, who have now had one of their biggest years to date, and then you look at Sharesies and things like this, where people are actively gambling into the share market. People want to gamble. How have we not convinced some of those people that gambling on sport and horse racing isn't bad as such, and that it's okay to be a part of this industry?
Mate, on behalf of the racing industry, thanks for what you do. I know obviously we're mates and it's easy to make it a bit flippant and, oh, you're doing a great job, but you're doing something which is very unique, I think, in the world of racing, and to Louis and all the rest of the team, mate. Good luck at the Karaka Million. Question, no Opie Bosson potentially this year. Could there be a chant of there's only one Jamie Richards, or there's only one Danielle Johnson, or is the chant usable for other people, or is that trademarked?
I think Opie wants you to say no, there's only his.
Well, I've actually got some socks that I was hoping you could drop off to him later on and see if we can get him into... Mick said that they're ugly, so he probably doesn't want to do that. They're lucky punting socks. We're hoping maybe we could get Opie into the room and we could just chant for him anyway. So.
I'm sure he would love that.
Perfect. Sounds like a done deal.
I'll suggest it. Well, it goes too quickly, doesn't it? The hour is already up here on Way, and it's been fantastic to have your company, and we look forward to joining you next week to do it all again with Group 1 action coming in from Trenton.